You know what makes Chicago unique? Chicago is a music city. Like there's soul people have come out of Chicago, jazz people have come out of Chicago, stepping is all Chicago, juking is all Chicago, house is all Chicago. And then when you look at hip hop, we don't have as many as New York or the West Coast. But one of the biggest rappers, Kanye, came out of Chicago. One of the longest running rappers, Common, has come out of Chicago. And, if you think about the people that started with Common, Beat Nuts, DOS Effects, you don't hear about them anymore. But Common is still like, the dude is like one step away from getting the EGOT, you know? All he needs is a Tony, and he's in a Broadway show right now. He has elevated his career through time. Like, I want to say flawlessly, but I mean, I'm not there. I don't know how. It looks flawless to me, and that's a Chicago native. When you start looking at who are the Chicago natives, funniest comedian ever, Robin Harris, Chicago native. Second funniest, Bernie Mac, Chicago native. You know, Chicago's that city, whether you like it or not. It is that city, Other cities get more fame for this and that. Chicago gets fame for everything. We're like roaches, they're everywhere. We're everywhere. Here's a funny story. I had a friend, and he went to LA to become a teacher. He's like, we were young. I wasn't even like 21, 22 at the time. He's like, yeah, come on out and visit me in LA. Oh, I can't wait to get to LA. LA, NWA, 100 miles and running. I'm going to Compton. So when we get there, it was cool because he lived in the building. And he told me, he's like, man, this building was used for the Grifters movie. I'm like, wow. He's like, yo, right here across the street, this was where Car Wash was from. Car Wash is my all-time favorite movie. I'm like, wow, I'm in it. I'm in it. He's driving. He's like, okay, now we're in Compton. And when he said we're in Compton, I looked up and I saw a little black boy riding a horse. And I felt like I had been sold such a false bill of goods. I'm like, this ain't no ghetto. We got ghetto back home. For real, for real. Ghetto so bad they closed it to kill an entire city. At least the black part of the city. But that's almost too political to get into. I'm from the south side of Chicago. My parents were from the low end. My father's from Ida B. Wells. My mother's from 3939. My father was, man, I always give me a second. Talking about my dad is hard. Because he was a bad mother. He was an artist. He sculpted. He played congas. He loved jazz. He was one of the first black students at Art Institute of Chicago. He was, he didn't understand me at all, but he was a good man. And he put me on to jazz and soul and music and the understanding of who I am as a black man in America. I used to say, Dad, you got to hear this Public Enemy album. He's like, they all right. They saying black too much. I like the message. I'm like, why you like the message over Public Enemy? Because never once do they say black in the message, but you knew it was about black people because of the story they tell. So when I started to write, I used to always keep that in mind. Like, how am I getting my visual across in my words? And the power is in not just saying the thing, but painting a picture of the thing, Yeah, he taught me that. That's one of the many lessons he taught me. My parents sent me to private school. I went to lab school, University of Chicago Laboratory School. Motherfucker, you were not supposed to go to lab school and want to be hip hop nothing. It wasn't even no hip hop when I went to lab school. I remember being in lab one day and hearing hip hop, you don't stop. Just those. No, music creativity was not part of the lab school culture. We had arts class, we had music class, but that was just to make you a well-rounded doctor, or lawyer. That was the goal. So really, I was kind of going against what my parents wanted for me. My mother's a nurse. My father is he became a teacher and later a principal at Sullivan House Alternative School. He before he passed away, he they wanted more from me than what they had. I told you, they came from the low end. We moved to Hyde Park, then we moved to Chatham. So I guess by now I'm supposed to be living in Wentworth, but I'm not. I went the whole other route. You know what I'm saying? I used to have a $500 apartment in Wicker Park on the fourth floor of a walk up that we graffitied all the way up to the top. So it was like kind of going against what they wanted. And also, I didn't continue college, which is what they really wanted. But it really wasn't for me. I just would get lost in organized learning. Even though I love to learn, I love to take in knowledge, but not the way school teaches it. First off, at lab, we wanted to start an alternative group called Blind Visage, Blind Vision. And we were deeply into alternative music. I used to watch, I don't know if people remember, but MTV used to have a show called 120. And I would watch 120 and see European groups. And also I used to, and I tell everybody this, I was a big fan of Herb Kemp's New Wave Punk Out, where he played European songs. Some of them fit into the house dynamic, but some of them were just on some next stuff. So I learned about Malcolm McLaren. I learned about Tackhead. I learned about Keith LeBlanc. So I was really into that kind of stuff. But then, to find out that the house band for Keith LeBlanc and those guys was the same house band with Sugar Hill Records. So it took me into hip hop. I realized in my hip hop journey, it was always a lab schooler that helped take me to the next level or made the journey with me. And I hadn't thought about it. And I look back and I'm like, Ethan McClendon was my first DJ. Chris Chichanihai was my first producer. Ron Clark was my first sample man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow. Right now, we're working on a documentary about Lower Links, and the guy David Steck is my director, who also, they all lab alumni. So like the one thing I've been like trying to get away from my whole life kind of has always been there and helped me become who I am within what I wanted to be. Lower Links was one of the first open mic hip hop shows for MCs. And we started in 91 at Lizard Lounge in Wicker Park. We did about a summer there, but it was a little too black for one of the bartenders, and we had to go. Got kicked out of there. My guy PJ Blackfist introduced me to Lee over at Lower Links. And we started to do a Sunday night open mic there that grew exponentially. And it was like the name of the film is Catalyst, because I feel like it was like all these things started from there. Like people were doing hip hop before me, but now all of a sudden people were meeting each other from the South Side, from the West Side, from the suburbs, and they were starting to collaborate and get to know each other better. Yeah, Lower Links was a moment, a movement, a vibe, whatever you little young kids want to call it nowadays. It was that, you know. Um, I'm blessed to have been a part of that, and I had a good team with He Who Walks Three Ways was my group. It was me, Juba, Lori, Ronald, and then we had people who were helping us like Paris, rest in peace, and Marguerite, and we just ran this little open mic. It didn't even run long, but if you ask anybody, they think, oh yeah, it was for years. It was like for a summer, till it got shut. And then the day it got shut down, it was a Sunday. We did the last show. I invited people to rhyme instead of doing a straight open mic. They rhymed. At the end of the show, we came upstairs, and there were like hundreds of people in Wrigley Field, just outside vibing, who couldn't get in. It was amazing, amazing. Yeah, I told you it was that moment that it'll never be reproduced. Lower Links had alumni that birthed more kids, So you end up with a Chance the Rapper from Brother Mike. And when you look at the tree and trace it backwards, I'm not going to say Lower Links was the end all, but it was a definite stop in the backwards tracing of that tree. You go further back, you get the Peely Fresh with Steps. You get Blackfist with Bam Bam, Pebbles, or some nightclub like that he used to do. You get Kingdom on the South Side in the university itself that birthed all this, for me. So yeah, it is definitely in the big thick of that tree roots. I mean, there were plenty of, I look now and I either label people alumni or alumni adjacent. And when I say alumni, I say, people like the Freddie Rodriguez, the Wood Harris, the Godfrey, and then even alumni adjacent, I'll be like, Reg Knock, if you know who Reg Knock is, grew up with Juba, who was my right-hand man at the time, Grandee Kuda B, and they grew up with Mr. Greenweeds and Cat Kool-Aid. So it's like all this energy was just coming out of this place. That's why I say it was a moment, and then you end up with your Virgils, you end up with your Theaster Gates, you end up with your Eric Williams, you end up with your Wicker Park movement, you end up with your Triple X and your Beat Parlors and your Red Dogs, and it all came out of that little basement club to me, At least that's how it felt. It was so organic, the growth of it. We just kind of rode the storm.